Today I've got an iPhone 14 Pro Max with a 3-minute boot loop. This is very common with this model. A lot of times it is due to a defective charge port, which we're most likely going to install. Many aftermarket charge ports will also cause this problem. Make sure to use a premium quality or factory pull replacement part. I'll put a purchase link in the video description. Although, taking a look at the back of this, it could have something to do with the wireless charging system or the power button. But in most cases it's going to be this. So what we're going to do is open it up, plug this in, and see if that fixes the issue before we go too far. Now to start with, we are going to remove the 2 Pentalobe screws down here on the bottom of the phone, right next to the charge port. These are easy to identify, so I'm not going to worry too much about screw organization when it comes to these. The downside is this phone has been opened before, so it's going to make things look easier than they might be if you've had your phone, if your phone's never been opened, I should say. So keep in mind, it is possible to damage your screen by removing it. I do recommend, if you have the option, to use a proper tool. Something like this actually works really well. I'm going to show you another method that I use, and again, keep in mind you're going to have a lot of patience in order to do this. You want to thoroughly heat this up, have some 99% alcohol, and then we're going to very carefully pry along these edges, being careful to avoid the cables that are on this side of the phone. That should be pretty warm to the touch by the time we get ready to open it up. And if you come in with your razor blade down here at the bottom, you want to be very careful and just barely lift it up. Same thing along this edge right here until we can get inside and have something to grab a hold of. And you can't go very deep, because if you go beyond the black line on the outside, you're going to be damaging the display. So these you have to just be very careful with. But as soon as it lifts up, we want to get something underneath here. I'm going to use one of these playing cards just as a placeholder of sorts. And once we get underneath, we'll get rid of this blade. And at any time we can turn on the power and make sure that our screen still works. But as you go prying along the edge here, you'll notice a few things that you run into. When you do, you can just kind of bring the pick outwards, or bring your pry tool outwards, so that you can work around anything that you run into on the edge. Don't need to go very deep. And we've got that pretty much disengaged at this point. Now when it comes to this side, you have to be very careful, because like I said, we've got cables that we need to avoid. So you don't want to go in very far here. Just enough to get under the edge of the glass, or under the edge of the display, I should say. You shouldn't feel any resistance as far as cables. I'll show you where those are in a second. Once you've got those pried up a bit, you can actually just kind of wiggle this, and if you need to, at any time, you can add some rubbing alcohol. Like I said, this one was pretty easy because it's been opened before. But a tiny bit of 99% rubbing alcohol along the edge here will help loosen up the adhesive on the inside. And we should eventually get to the point where we can open it just like this. I'm actually going to spin it around so that we can prop this up so that it doesn't fall over. And we're going to take out all of these screws that hold this panel in place. There's actually one up here that's kind of hard to see, so I'll see if I can get a little more light in here. And we will take out all of these screws. These are going to be tri-point Y000. And once you get those out, you can lift up on this panel, and we'll remove this, set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and unplug the battery. That should be the first order of business. So you want to get this cable right here. If you happen to have a halberd spudger, these work pretty well. Otherwise, if you're very careful, you can use tweezers. Just make sure you're not going in very deep and you're not touching anything else in the process. You don't want to cause any issues. If you just get under the edge there, you can pop that up like so, and now we have no electricity running through the device. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and disconnect the charge port right here. And there's actually a secondary cable for the charge port right behind the display connector. It's a little hard to see, so I'll go ahead and unplug this one. And if you take this little metal plate off right here, you're going to have to get underneath it. There's some adhesive behind there, so you'll have to pull a bit to get it to release. You can always put some rubbing alcohol on here again if you want to loosen it up a bit. But for the most part, you're not going to damage anything just by pulling this plate off. There we go. And we're going to unplug this cable right here just to make sure that's not causing any issues. I don't think that it would, but we don't want to misdiagnose this, because what we're going to do is go ahead and plug our display cable back in, fold the charge port cable over this direction, and then I'm going to plug in my new charge port, which I know is functional, and we're just going to lay it in just like this. Get that connected. One more thing, after we plug in our charge port, we do need to make sure that we connect the battery, because the phone's not going to turn on if we don't. Alright, so we've got the charge port, display, the battery connected. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the power. Let this boot up. And then we will give it 3 minutes to make sure that it is going to stay on. Well, you can't see that, but you'll have to take my word for it here. We're going to time this thing once it gets fully booted and make sure that it stays on. Alright, so we are past the 3-minute mark, so I think we're okay as far as the 3-minute boot loop goes. I'm going to go ahead and power down the phone and get this under the microscope, because I want to be able to show you up close what we're doing when it comes to transferring this charge port. Alright, so this is the lower end of the phone. Right here is where your charge port plugs in. We're going to start up at this corner and first remove the speaker. And in order to do that, you're going to have 4 screws. There's going to be one here, here, and we're just going to organize these on our mat as we remove them. And then you're going to have 2 more, one here and one here. At this point, we can actually remove the speaker assembly, or the loudspeaker, but you're going to have a little piece of tape that's stuck to it down here on the bottom. So you can just kind of peel this outward, just like that. And there is your loudspeaker. We'll set that aside over here on the mat. And then we have a whole bunch of screws that need to come out. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with these 3 on the end. You'll see that there's one in the edge, kind of over to the side here, and I'll make a note of this when I take it out. So this is a tri-point screw right over here, but we can't quite get to it yet. First we have a standoff screw that comes out right here. Remember, this hole is going to have nothing in it until we get the speaker installed when we go to put it back together. We have a Phillips right here. And then right next to where that first screw was, we have a tri-point that goes into the side edge here of the phone. Go ahead and take that out. I'm going to put a little note on that so we can remember what it is. And as we move across here in the center, go ahead and go for the rest of these. And we're going to make a little symbol here so that we know what our charge port is represented by. And I'm going to use that to keep track of where to position these screws on my mat. So we've got a standoff here. We've got a Phillips right over here next to it. On this side, another standoff here for our Taptic engine right above that one. So we will put that right over here. And we'll move across a little further. This thing looks like it's got a bit of glare. Right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. And let's see, we'll put that one right over here. guess I can't really zoom out much here. Let's go ahead and disconnect this motor right over here. You have a pop connector, pull that out, and you can actually lift up this entire piece along with that tape that's connected to it. And we will set that aside over here. And then we are also going to have one additional screw here in the corner on the edge of the phone like we did on the other side. Go ahead and get that one out. And I will mark this so that we remember it as well. And then we're going to have a couple screws that go along the edge right over here and here. And I'm just going to put those right up here. Now we can go ahead and remove this little metal piece. You'll probably need some tweezers to do it. There may be some adhesive underneath. So just very carefully lift, and you'll see that it is kind of stuck on the inside there. I don't really want to put, actually we could put some rubbing alcohol, but it tends to make a mess of this foam stuff sometimes. So I'm just going to try to pull that apart as much as possible, and then we can just go ahead and lift it out. If I can get a grip on it. Pretty sticky. Alright, and we've got two more screws here and here. This glare is crazy. Alright, let's go ahead and get these two out. And again, this one goes right near the port, so I'm going to draw another symbol for the port so that we know that's where this one is going to go. And then there's one right next to it, straight across. And then we have our final two screws, which are going to be down in the bottom, right on either side of the port. Just a quick note here, if you're trying to salvage an existing charge port, you want to make sure to unstick this microphone cable here so that it doesn't get broken when you remove the port. And we'll set these right down here. And we're just about there. I'm going to have to fold this over. Get underneath this microphone, flip that over. And then that is just about it. The only thing we have left is to get this cable out from underneath the motherboard. And in order to do that, we're going to have to remove the battery. So you're going to want to take this one single standoff screw out of the board. That's going to allow us to lift it up once we get the battery out and slide that thing out from underneath. So we will set this over here with another note so that we know this is a board screw. And that's where that goes. And now I'm going to have to make some room so we can get this under the camera so you can see the battery removal. This next part takes a lot of patience and time, liberal amount of rubbing alcohol, and whatever you do, do not use a sharp object or anything metal to pry your battery out, because that is a good way to have it explode and catch fire in your face. And our battery is still plugged in, so that's cute. Should have unplugged that a while ago. So make sure your battery is disconnected. And we're going to put quite a bit of rubbing alcohol in here. Let that soak for a bit. And remember, 99% evaporates relatively fast. And we're just going to let this sit, and then we're going to pry. If you're lucky, you can pull out the battery strips, but I'm usually not very lucky with those. And I want to be able to show you how we can do this if you can't do that. So there are a couple of things here down on the bottom that if you can get a hold of, you can actually pull. They rarely seem to work for me. Almost definitely not going to work with gloves on. I'm going to grab a pair of plastic tweezers. Well, we got one. Let's see if we get the other. Yeah, that one's not going to make it. So I wanted to show you that you can do this with rubbing alcohol. It just takes longer. Just takes more patience. Let that get underneath. I want something a little stronger to pry with. And a lot of times you can come in here along the edge. Just make sure you're between the battery and the outside of the housing. And if you take your time, you should be able to get it to come out. And have a big mess on the inside. So we will clean this up and put some new adhesive in later. That's how that's supposed to work. Anyways, we'll clean that up later. The main thing is this: from here, what we can do is get our cable, just kind of slide it over this direction so that you get out from underneath the motherboard, and then you can start lifting here at the bottom. Make sure all your screws are out, of course, and this should just wiggle right outwards like that. And this was actually tucked underneath this stuff right here, so we're going to move this over. If you have a brand new cable that's not already bent correctly like this one is, make sure that you use this as a guide, and you can pre-bend anything here like where this goes over the top of the motherboard. And then we are going to take this and just swap it right across, and I may actually need some magnification for this one. And if you see this thing fly out, it needs to go right over here. Like that. Oh, stay with there, would you? All right. Kind of goes at an angle. Get this tucked underneath. Right under here. If you want to, you can actually lift this up or out. I'm going to try to leave it somewhat in the same position there. This goes over the top though, so like that. And this needs to go under here, like so. And make sure that everything, these are folded over. And you may have to fold this piece also. It usually comes like this. You just bend it over and make sure that it lines up. There's a little component set right here that goes into this slot. So make sure that lines up and it lays down flat, just like that. There's actually a little latch here that will hold it in place. And we'll make sure this stuff is all in the right position before we put everything back together, which we are going to do now. However, do make sure that you get your cable tucked underneath your motherboard. Just like that. I'll probably dry this out a little more before I put everything back together permanently. Alright, and we are just about ready for our screws. Okay, so we're going to start with our 2 bottom screws. Alright, I think our alcohol has, we still got a little bit in there. That's okay. Remember, we want to make sure to get this motherboard screw installed. I'm going to do that now. And from here, we had our 2 standoffs. One right near the charge port and one right across from it over here. This little metal piece, and again, make sure these sit down in the right location. Get this on here, and you might have to hold that down while we grab a screw or 2. Get at least one, let's see. Okay, so remember we had 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but first we need to get this one that goes in the side. So we'll get this tri-point screw right over here. Now we're only going to put in these 2 screws at the moment. And in fact, you can actually put this one in up here as well. Whoops, right over here. So we'll do this one, this one, this one right over here. And now we've got to get our Taptic motor installed before these other 2 screws. So we'll get that into position, go ahead and plug it in right up here. So you get that aligned, should snap right into place. And then we're going to do these 3. And we can put this one right over here. Then we've got our 3 up here. Remember, this goes in last with the speaker, and you want to make sure that this piece is aligned also. Right over here. Whoa, looks like our old microphone stayed behind. So go ahead and get that out. That one just tore right off. We need to do our tri-point over here in the corner first. Get our speaker installed. And we've got these 2 right here. And from this point, you can go ahead and clean up the inside of the housing, get some new adhesive down for your battery, and begin the reassembly process. You can buy these replacement strips like the ones that were inside the battery compartment before I started the repair. In this case, I ended up using some 3M double stick tape instead.